had good points. Because I used to think like Steiny. I used to think like, okay, so I'm the first wild card, and we won 100 games, but the team in front of us that won our division won 102. And then the second wild card is below 500, and that team that's below 500 could knock out the team that won 100 games. Then that sucks because it's hard to win and grind. I think the regular season is harder than the playoffs.
He's so mad he left his readers. No reading for Steiny tonight.
So I
got your readers. How about that?
I kind of get where you both were coming from. The extra teams in the wild cards don't have credibility until one of those wins a championship. And then your fan base and then other fan bases can say, well, the Diamondbacks last year were the 6, and the Diamondbacks got to the World Series. Or the Giants, was it 12 when they won the wild card game in Pittsburgh, won the World Series. So once that wild card team can go all the way, and then fan bases can be like, hey, in 12 and 19 and whatever year it was, this team did that, then it lends credibility to it.
Of course.
But like in the NFL, it's hard for a wild card team to win the Super Bowl. It's been done.
Yep.
It's hard for the play-in team. It's only been a few years since the NBA's been doing it to win a championship. They haven't done it. So like I get it. I get both sides. I really do. But I don't think it's hurting the sport. Like I had the attendances up. In 15 teams of the league, attendance has increased this year.
Yeah.
In 15 teams, it's either stayed the same or gone down.
Here's the funny thing. That was my only point. And I get like our text line is filled with Steiny's wrong, Willard's wrong. I actually feel like, and this is going to bother some people when I say it, I don't believe that I can be wrong. Because my point was simply, give me a metric that suggests what you're saying. It was his statement to start this whole thing. I listened to Steiny and Goo religiously. And his statement was, this is hurting the sport. Give me a piece of evidence that suggests, and, you know, the load management thing, that's a completely different conversation. And I think that there's overlap to it.
Yeah,
but
that's not relevant.
That's not what we're talking about.
That was not relevant to this argument.
That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is whether or not the expansion of playoff teams is hurting the sport and turning everyone off. And all I'm saying, and I love, I'm so over here making Steiny sound like he's an old white guy. He's 7 years older than me, and I'm an old white guy. Whatever. We're like, it's not that I don't get what he's saying, but you cannot, there is no metric that suggests this is driving people away. There's nothing.
Well, I would argue that in certain cities that the more teams are in it late, there's interest, especially in cities that don't annually go to the playoffs. So if you get a Kansas City that's in a wild card, well, Kansas City's going to go nuts about this. If Pittsburgh and Skeens and Jones and this young pitching staff they have are in it in September, Pittsburgh's going to go nuts. Boom. I mean, maybe some cities like the Yankees and maybe even San Francisco scoff at the wild card, like, oh, we're better than that. So I don't think fans are going or not going to the game based on more teams in the playoffs. I think if you made a list of why people are turned on by baseball or why people are turned off by baseball, I don't think the extra wild card team is even going to be in the top 7 or 8.
I agree with you.
It might be, whatever, the pitch clock sucks or, the shift or whatever. Or the games are too short now, and they used to be like there'd be a lot of things. My ballpark sucks if you're in whatever. There's probably a list. I don't know that one's real high on a lot of people's list. And the only way it would be high on someone's list in a positive way in the month of September. If your team hasn't been in the playoffs in 10 years and they're right there and they could get that 6th seed, and guess what? You get 2 extra games at least. And if your team wins those 2 games, it's 2 out of 3. Guess what? They're really in the playoffs. And here we go. Like the Diamondbacks last year. They were number 6. The Phillies, I think the year before were the last seed, and they got to the World Series.
87 wins, I think.
Yeah.
Went to the World Series.
So like at first though, I was like Steiny. Like I thought like that. And
when you say at first, you mean when you don't mean at the start of the argument. You mean at the start of when the rule came in.
Yeah, I speak in general terms a lot.
I wanted to make sure people didn't think when the rule Steiny, that'd be crazy.
No, when the rule came out, I remember George Will, who was a big part of adding another wild card team with the commissioner, and he was part of that committee. And we had lunch, and I said, another wild card team? I'm like, George, this is just like ridiculous. Like, what are we doing? Everybody going to make the playoffs? We give them participation trophies? He's like, FP, it'll generate excitement in cities that normally wouldn't have excitement in September. And what's wrong with that? And I kind of went, okay, let me see how it plays out. But I was get off my lawn on all the new rules. I went on the other station and was like, I can't believe a pitch clock. We work our whole lives as athletes to slow the game down, slow the game down. You hear the managers at the game say, the game really sped up on us last night. Now there's a clock that's going to speed it up on you. There's no way to slow it down. And this and that and the two disengagement rules. And then I saw it and I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, look, the NFL just did this like 3 years ago. There's a playoff game on Monday nights. What the hell are we looking at?
Yeah.
I get it. I just, all I'm really calling out is something that happens to every human being in the world.
But we get grouchy when we're old?
Yeah, not grouchy, but when things change, you're like, don't change them. You know, my dad is in his 80s. There are multiple newspapers that still get thrown at his doorstep in the morning. What? What is that?
He doesn't want to change.
He doesn't want to change. He doesn't want to read it on his computer. He wants to sit there with it while he eats his breakfast real slow. And then he's going to take it with him to the you-know-where.
Take a dump
He
with it.
don't want to change. And so that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with how Steiny feels. But what bothered me about it was he decided it was representative of the world, and it's not. And I've actually tried really hard. It's one thing that I've really worked hard on in my career is knowing that when I got older, I didn't want to start saying, well, today sucks because it's not 20 years ago. So today sucks. No, it doesn't. It's different. It's different. There's things that I like better. There's things that I don't like better. But I'm going to let the world kind of lead the way on some of these things, and I'm certainly going to pick my battles. Like if I say to you beast mode, do you know who I'm talking about?
Michael Morse?
No, I'm talking about Marshawn Lynch,
okay.
And I wonder how many of you remember that Marshawn Lynch and the nickname beast mode was born out of a home playoff game that a team earned with a 7-9 record. Too watered down? I still remember the run.
I don't think you can give a blanket statement for all sports.
No.
Because I guarantee if you polled Warrior fans, 3/4 of them gave zero you-know-whats about the play-in game.
See, I don't agree with that statement either.
Now we won 4 championships. Now we're the 10 seed. What are we really going to do?
Sure. It wasn't. It's not like, I'm not going to say it felt good, but I don't think people dialed out by any stretch.
I don't think more dialed in because of it, though.
The ratings...
Yeah,
are pretty good.
Okay,
like the play-in tournament is a success. I think that's an objective statement. That is a provable. The play-in tournament has been a win for the NBA.
What about the colorful court tournament in the middle of the season that I thought was a joke?
I thought that was stupid. And the reason
what do you even call it?
They called it the in-season tournament.
Oh yeah,
and then it was shortened to the ISP. And I still challenge people. I do this all the time. I'm like, who won? You remember?
New Orleans. I don't know.
It was the Lakers.
Was it?
Yeah. And
what did that get them?
Nothing.
It didn't get them a new coach from UConn.
No, it didn't. And it didn't get them a playoff series win either.
Dan Hurley, we won that in-season tournament.
Yeah.
And you still don't want to coach for us?
Well, my issue with the in-season tournament is that I'm still trying to figure out what you're offering to the fans.
Colorful courts and weird uniforms.
Right. And they're like, we're not doing it until the players make more money.
Just microdose some shrooms and watch the NBA.
I know you weren't over here yet, but when the in-season tournament happened, I was openly rooting against the Warriors. I wanted them to lose. Because
they have a couple days off.
They had more time off.
Yeah.
That's less effort. Plus, when you lose, remember there were some of those dynamic games where you didn't know who your opponent was until you were either in or out of the in-season tournament.
Yeah.
They got a game against the Blazers. I'm like, they're going to win that game. And they did. So I wanted them to lose. And they did. And that helped them in some way, shape, or form. They got a victory out of it.
But I mean, to Steiny's point, I don't think that hurt the NBA, but I don't think it helped it.
Correct.
I don't think
that's not about playoff expansion.
I don't think playoff expansion in MLB is hurting it. I would argue that it's helping it, and that I was wrong with my initial take on it. In the NFL, the wild card football games are, more than let's go. That's the best weekend of the playoffs is the wild card weekend.
I would predict right now that the NFL is going to come up with a consolation tournament, and we're going to watch that too. All the teams that didn't make the playoffs. Here we go. Yeah. Tuesday through Thursday during the playoffs, You guys are playing.
No, they won't do it.
I mean, right, they won't. But I'm tongue in cheek, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
In the NFL, we'll watch anybody play anybody.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, all I'm asking for is tell me where this is hurting it.
I would say I would argue with Steiny if he were here.
He was.
That fans don't go to games in June and July because their team is in or not in it.
100% agree.
Fans go to games in the summertime because it's the sport they grew up with. It's the national pastime, and they want to be at the yard for 3 hours and watch their team either win or lose. And drink a beer and eat a hot dog, BS with their friends, in nice weather for the most part across the country.
Kids have been begging me to go.
Kids are out of school.
And not once did they reference the standings.
Let's go. And maybe the kid's favorite player is Christian Yelich, and he's coming in from Milwaukee, and you want to take your kid to see Christian Yelich. Maybe one of your kid's favorite player is Logan Webb, and you go to the game to enjoy baseball. Like, most fans are not going to not go to the game. Like, oh, you have tickets June 30th for, I don't know, the Mets, but the Giants are not in the wild card, so I'm not going to go. It's just more, baseball's more of a one game event, family. At least that's what it was for me growing up. Like, I never knew, I couldn't tell you what place the Giants were in. Even when I was in junior high school, when we would all pile into the car from Folsom, California and drive down 80 and go freeze our butts off at Candlestick Park. I didn't know if the Giants, I didn't know what they were, they were 7-3 in their last 10 or 3-7.
I don't know what place
I just knew it was a big league baseball game, and I got to watch big league players for 4 hours, and I used to root for extra innings because I won a quad A candlestick. Even if the Giants were ahead, I hope they blew the save in the ninth because I wanted a quad A candlestick. And it was just baseball. And if there was 26 teams or 25 teams in the playoffs, I didn't care. I didn't know. So I don't think it's turning fans on until September, but I don't think it's turning fans off ever.
I definitely agree with that. And actually, I will say, if it's going to go one way, it's turning fans on. And it's not because anybody's got playoff fever, but I do think there is sort of there's a drawback to buying tickets to a game when your team is like out of it. When any team sort of signals, we're going nowhere. And how many teams in the National League have signaled that so far?
Yeah, two.
That's it.
Rockies, Marlins.
So I don't care what place the Giants are in, but what are we building toward right now? We're not actually building toward October. We're building toward July. Are you a buyer or are you a seller? It's almost like the baseball's own little in-season tournament. And you need to declare, like a poker match, are you going high or are you going low? And the race for that is right now, and the metric is how close can you stay to the playoff standings. And only two teams, the Marlins and the Rockies, are like, we out. Everybody else is right there. Why? Because there's more playoff spots. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? There's positives and negatives just like everything else. And I'm not telling anybody out there to like it. I just don't think that there is any way to measure whatsoever that this is hurting sports. Here's the other thing. If you think that expansion of playoffs and expansion of teams and all that stuff, if you think that's a bad thing for sports, bow out now. Because I can promise you during your lifetime, wherever you are right now versus 25 years from now, it's going to be bigger. More teams, more playoffs, more games, more money, more series, 17-game schedule, my rear end. I'll bet you everything I own right now that in 25 years they're not playing 17 games. Playing 18, maybe 20 by then. It's always going to be more. So if you fight that, you're going to lose.
Well, you have 20 games in the NFL, you're going to have deaths. You're going to have one person die a year. If you start making those guys in 25 years, and they're going to be bigger, faster, stronger, 300 pounds running 4.40s, and then you add 3 games to that, you're going to have like I don't know. It's going to get gnarly.
49ers played 20 games this year. They're okay. They're all getting paid.
Well, I'm more on your side in this if it matters what I'm thinking versus Steiny's, but I do see both of your points, but I don't see the thing I like that you said, and just kind of wrapping this whole thing up. The thing I said is, how is it when you said how is it hurting it?
Yeah, that was my only question. Well, here, hold.